Gora Bhakta Vrinda Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnanajana Shalakya Chakshurunglitamena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shri Jab Tak Swaminiti Nampi Nama Acharya Padaya Natai Kuma Pradayani Gorakata Tamdaya Nagar Pradaya Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharni Nirvisesh Munivadi Paschat Vishtani Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya from Nityananda Shanvat Vidashvasa Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna. So Hare Krishna to everyone. And we were there in the Gundicha Marjanam chapter, and we were Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they put the proposal, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, that you should meet King Prataprudra. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that if Damodara will give me permission, then I can do that. So and in the purport we saw how it is mentioned that it was none of his business of Damodara to give advice to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but normally he did that. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very subtly indicating that it's not correct etiquette to advise or correct the Lord. So in return, Damodar, that was he didn't say it directly, but that's what he implied. He said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I shall not meet the king at the request of all the devotees. No, but I shall do so if Damodara will give his permission. So in reply, Damodara says, Damodara kahe tumi swatantra Ishvara kartavya sab tumara gochara. Damodara immediately replied, My Lord, you are the fully independent Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since everything is known to you, you know what is permissible and what is not permissible. Ami kon shudra jiva toma ke vidiva apani mili bitare tanre tahao dekiba. I am merely an insignificant jiva. So what power do I have to give directions to you? By your own personal choice, you will meet with the king. I shall see it. Raja, he's saying it is a fact. Krishna is independent. He doesn't have to listen to anyone. But only because of love, when his devotee loves him so much, then the Lord agrees to listen to whatever the devotee says. That's the only way in which even God agrees to be controlled. Even though he is completely independent, he doesn't have to listen to anyone. But we know that the devotees can completely control him with their love. So, but here, of course, Damodar is not yet perfect, but then he takes the, this thing upon himself. They presenting and love. Yadyapi Ishvara tumi parama swatantra tatapi swabhave hau prema paratantra. Although you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are completely independent, still you're dependent on the love and affection of your devotees. That is your nature. And that is not a weakness. That dependency is his own desire to feel like that. It's not that he is weak or he is helpless, but he likes to feel dependent. Nityananda kahi aiche haya kunjana ye tomare kahi kara raja darshana. Nityananda Prabhu then said, who is there in the three worlds who can ask you to see the king? Kintu anuragi lokera swabhava ekahaya Ishtana paile nija prana se chadaya. Still, isn't it the nature of an attached man to give up his life if he does not attain his desired object? For instance, some of the wives of the Brahmanas were performing sacrifices, gave up their lives in the presence of their husbands for the sake of Krishna. This refers to the day Lord Sri Krishna and his cowherd boys and flocks of animals were present on the pasturing grounds near Mathura. At that time, the cowherd boys, being a little hungry, requested food, and Lord Krishna asked them to go to the Brahmanas who were engaged nearby and perform a yajna or a sacrifice, and to get some food from that yajna. Being so ordered by the Lord, all the cowherd boys went to the Brahmanas and asked them for the food, but they were denied. After this, the cowherd boys begged food from the wives of the Brahmanas. All these wives were very much devoted, spontaneous love. And as soon as they heard the request of the cowherd boys and understood that Krishna wanted some food, they immediately gave it to him. They were not chastised for this by their husbands, and they were ready to give up their lives. It is the nature of a pure devotee to sacrifice his life for the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So that Nityananda Prabhu is saying how the Lord is comparing King Prataprudra to the wives of the Brahmanas who they had pure love for Krishna and they were above the rules and regulations. And but their husbands were doing the Yagnik Brahmanas. They were following rules and they said that we cannot. I mean, the boys came and asked prasadam. I mean, the boga for Krishna, and so imagine the yajna is being performed for Krishna only, and Krishna himself is coming there and asking, "Give me food," and they're saying their intelligence is quite dull because they're not. They got carried away by doing all that performance. They were so much infatuated by the flowery words of the Vedas and all the rituals and their knowledge. They're quite puffed up. And so they couldn't recognize when Krishna himself is asked, that is the purpose. Why we are doing yajna is not just the ritual itself, but it is the person Krishna whom we are trying to please. So they denied it, whereas their wives, they wanted to immediately give it to Krishna. So that's and they were ready to give up their lives even. I mean, they went to Krishna and their husbands were chastising, but they didn't mind. We don't mind even they have to give up our life, we'll do it for Krishna. So that's what Nityananda Prabhu is comparing Pratap Rudra. Nityananda Prabhu then submitted one suggestion for the Lord's consideration. There is a way, he suggested, by which you need not meet the king, but which would enable the king to continue living. If you, out of your mercy, send one of your outward garments to the king would live, hoping to see you sometime in the future. Sri Nityananda Prabhu was thus very tactfully suggesting that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu give a piece of his old clothing to the king. Even though the king was not to meet the Lord, the king would then be pacified by receiving such a cloth. The king was very much anxious to see the Lord, yet it was not possible for the Lord to see him. Just to resolve the situation, Nityananda Prabhu suggested that the Lord send an old piece of clothing. Thus, the king would understand that the Lord was showing mercy to him. The king would then not do anything drastic like giving up his life or becoming a mendicant. That is the threat that Pratap Rudra said that if I cannot get to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then what's the use? I mean, my kingdom, my family, nothing makes me happy. So I'm going to become a mendicant, go door to door begging. And this was, and those, like a, what was that thing? Like a sadhu in those days. They used to wear one earring in only one ear and go. door to door begging. They were not genuine sadhus, but anyway, that's what people thought. So Prataprudra said, I mean, those are the sadhus, and he said, I will also become like that or give up my life. So Nityananda Prabhu, I mean, they believed it and that he's capable of doing that because he was so much intense desire to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, to such a person, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu need not have said, I would see he's a king and all that. But just for outsiders, I mean, just to set the standard that, sannyasi should not hobnob with the kings and politicians and all his mind will get polluted. So that was the reason why he was keeping that distance. But Prataprudra was beyond just, just a king. He was a pure devotee. And so a pure devotee can do any job. He can be even a king and he'll not be affected by material things. So that is a great mystery. And the devotees could understand that. And that's why they were pleading with the Lord to see him. There's nothing wrong in seeing him. He was not an ordinary king or something. He was such a wonderful devotee. But anyway, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to keep the social etiquette, so that just for our sake, in the future, sannyasis should not just go around mixing freely with all the politicians and all that. So he said that why don't you give your upper garment? Because there's no difference between the Lord and his paraphernalia. So his outer clothing is as worshipable. So that's what that will give them some hope. The Lord said, since you're all very learned personalities, whatever you decide, I shall accept. Lord Nityananda Prabhu then obtained an external garment used by the Lord by requesting it from Govinda. Thus Nityananda Prabhu delivered the old cloth to the care of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya sent it to the king. When the king received the old cloth, he began to worship it exactly as he would worship the Lord personally. But this is also the conclusion of the Vedic injunctions. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the absolute truth, everything in relation to him is also on the same platform. The king had great affection for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and although he did not see the Lord, he had nonetheless already attained the conclusion of devotional service. Immediately upon receiving the cloth from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the king began to worship it, accepting it as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord's clothing, bedding, slippers, and everything required as an ordinary necessity are all transformations of Sesha, Vishnu, the expansion of Sri Baladeva. Thus, the cloth and other paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are but other forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything connected to the Lord is worshipable. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs us that just as Krishna is worshipable, Krishna's place, Vrindavana, is also worshipable. And as Vrindavana is worshipable, similarly, the paraphernalia in Vrindavana, the trees, roads, river, everything is worshipable. A pure devotee thus sings, Jaya Jaya Vrindavana Vasi Yata Jana. All glories to the residents of Vrindavana. If a devotee has a staunch devotional attitude, all these conclusions will be awakened or revealed within the heart. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata devi tata gurau tasyaite katita hi artaha prakashante mahatmana. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Thus, following in the footsteps of Maharaja Prataprudra and other devotees, we should learn to worship everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is referred to by Lord Shiva as Tadiyanam. In the Padma Purana, it is said, Aradhanam Sarvesham, Vishnur Aradhanam Param, Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samacharam. Lord Shiva is telling Parvati, O Devi, the most exalted system of worship is the worship of Lord Vishnu. Greater than that is the worship of Tadiya or anything belonging to Vishnu. Sri Vishnu is Sachidananda Vigraha. Similarly, the most confidential servant of Krishna, the spiritual master, and all devotees of Vishnu are Tadiya, the Sachidananda Vigraha Guru, Vaishnavas, and things used by them must be considered Tadiya and without a doubt worshipable by all living beings. So, very, very, esoteric knowledge about how everything connected with the Lord is as worshipable as the Lord, or even more. That's what Shiva is telling Parvati, that among all worship, I mean, people worship Shiva, but Shiva is saying that the best form of worship is to Lord Vishnu. And better than that are things connected with him, including all his devotees. A pure devotee, like especially the spiritual master, who's a pure devotee of the Lord, then it is even more important to worship him higher. Krishna is very happy. It's not that the spiritual master is greater than the Krishna, but because the spiritual master is so dear to Krishna, Krishna is very happy if we worship his whoever is beloved to him than worshipping himself. It is his because of that. That is why we worship Radharani this minute. Oh, again. We worship Radharani because um, because she is very dear to Krishna. That's why in all or or Baladeva in this way, then Krishna is even more happy. It's always easy to go to the spiritual master because it's very easy. You can just directly ask him what does he want. And so in this way we can satisfy him. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasadu. If Krishna, Guru is satisfied, then Krishna is also very satisfied. So in this way we can, I mean, it's easier to serve also. Then it should. Thus, after returning, so O Devi, so that's what Tadyanam. Ramananda Raya ya be Dakshina haite di aila Prabhu sange rahite Raja ke nivedila. After returning from his service in South India, Ramanand Rai requested the king to allow him to remain with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Ramanand Rai requested the king, this is Nityananda Prabhu's telling him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Ramanand Rai requested the king to allow him to stay with the Lord, the king immediately gave him permission with great satisfaction. As for the king himself, he began to solicit Ramanand Rai it's not a narration, I think it is working. And he was doing an important job of being the governor of Tamil Nadu, or that time, no, it was Madras, as it was called before Madras. And it was a very, very important position. But because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he met him, he told him that you leave everything and come and stay with me. So Ramanandra immediately he's submitted this to the king, and the king was so happy. And not only that, he said that he will give him all his salary also, full salary I'll give you, but still you stay with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because Ramanand Rai was a grihastha, he had his wife and children and all that. So he said for his maintenance, he said that I'll give you the salary, but you just serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So such a great devotee he is. Even in his I mean, he'll have to find, but there won't be anybody as good as him. He was ready to, it was okay for him. For Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's sake, he was ready to sacrifice everything. So that is why now, after that, after he gave him permission to join Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he began to solicit Ramanand Rai to make a meeting arrangement. The king told Ramanand Rai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very merciful to you. Therefore, please solicit my meeting with him without fail. The king and Ramanand Rai returned together to Jagannath Kshetra Puri, and Sri Ramanand Rai met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. At that time, Ramanand Rai informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the ecstatic love of the king. Indeed, as soon as there was some opportunity, he repeatedly informed the Lord about the king. This is why it's good to approach the Tadiyas or the servants of Krishna, because the servants of Krishna are so merciful that if you approach them, they will plead with the Lord on our behalf. Instead of directly approaching the Lord, it is nice to go through his servants, because then it's easy. Somebody goes, you cannot glorify yourself to the Lord. Oh Lord, I did all this for you. I'm a very good devotee. You can't tell like that. I mean, you won't feel like telling him also. But if you go to the devotee, then he will, glorify to the Lord and make him like you. Like how Sita did with Ram and that Kakasura. Kakasura was actually um, Indra's son, Jayanta. For some reason, he took the form of a crow. And then when Rama and Sita were in the forest, and Rama was lying down on the lap of Sita Devi and sleeping. It was daytime. And so at that time, for some reason, I don't know why he had this Asuric desire to go and poke on Sita Devi's um, chest. And then, but Sita never said, she didn't even stir because she didn't want Ram to be disturbed. And the blood from her body started, it fell on Rama's forehead. And Rama immediately woke up and he saw this and he was so angry. Who could have done this to Sita? And he saw this Kakasura and he was about to burn him. And I mean, he actually sent an arrow, I think, and Kakasura fell down. So even in that fallen position, Sita Devi, her heart was so soft and kind on the living entity, whoever, I mean, imagine, he did so much harm to her, but she was filled with so much kindness. She just turned his body so that his head was facing Rama. So it looked as if he was surrendering to him. And seeing that, then Rama felt a great kindness in his heart and he forgave him. So this is the nature of the devotee, that they always want to pray to the Lord, and the Lord listens to the appeals of his devotees. This in material life, the sifarish or going through somebody is not very nice. You want to directly approach, but Krishna, he likes recommendations rather than go directly. If his devotee recommends, then he accepts them. And Sri Ramanand Raya was indeed a diplomatic minister for the king. His general behavior was very expert, and simply by describing the king's love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gradually softened the Lord's mind. A diplomat in the material world knows how to deal with people, especially in political affairs. Some of the great devotees of the Lord, like Ramanand Rai, Raghunath Das Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and Rup Goswami, were government officers and had a background of very opulent householder life. Consequently, they knew how to deal with people. In many instances, we have seen the diplomacy of Rupa Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, and Ramanand Rai employed in the service of the Lord. When Raghunath Das Goswami's father and uncle were to be arrested by government officials, Raghunath Das Goswami hid them and personally met the government officers and settled the affair diplomatically. This is but one instance. Similarly, Sanatan Goswami, after resigning his ministership, was thrown in jail, and he bribed the attendant of the jail so he could leave the clutches of the Nawab and live with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now we see Ramanand Raya, a most confidential devotee of the Lord, diplomatically soften the heart of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, despite the fact that the Lord definitely decided not to meet the king. The diplomacy of Ramanand Raya and entreaties of Sarvam Bhattacharya and all the other great devotees succeeded. The conclusion is that diplomacy used for the service of the Lord is a form of devotional service. Everything used in the more the goal is the only reason is the only thing which determines whether something is genuine or not. So even diplomacy, which is considered actually, Vaishnavas are generally told you should not be diplomatic, you should be very direct, not beat around. You should be very straightforward and all that. But even diplomacy used for the right cause, then that also becomes transcendental. So in all these, how Raghunath Das Goswami, when his father and uncle, because they had not give, no, because they were actually to the Muslim government, they didn't give all the money which were covered. They were supposed to give 1%, but they didn't give all the percentage. They kept for themselves. So that one, there was a Turkish person who was feeling jealous, why these people only should be collectors. I want to be collector. So he went and leaked to the Muslim king that, see, what, this Mazumdar, Hiranya Mazumdar and Govardhan Mazumdar, they are happily keeping so much money for themselves. So they were caught. And that's what they were, officials were sent to catch them. And at that time, so Raghunath Das, they hid the father and uncle, and Raghunath Das Goswami went to meet. And Raghunath Das Goswami, he was saying, he won them over by saying that maybe the Turkish person himself came, and he talked very sweetly with him, saying that you're like my uncle, like that, in a very nice way. And he just won his heart. And so and then he also struck a deal with him that they will give him also one commission. So again, it was settled, and then they got back that thing, something like that. He used very nice diplomatic skills to do that. And Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, Sanatan Goswami, he told the jailer, you are a very great religious person. He told him like that. Nobody will think, oh, I'm not actually. He felt very flattered, and he said, yeah, yeah. And he was thinking in his mind. So Sanatan Goswami said, see, I'm going to serve your Allah only. So why don't you just release me? I'll give you some money and all that. So then he said that maybe he said no, but I'll get caught and all that. So Sanatan Goswami, he knew he was asking for more money. So he told him, no, I doubled it, I'll give you more money. So then he agreed. Then he said, okay, whenever, so he said that, but what if the king asks me, how you escaped? I'll be caught. What will happen to me? He said, no, you just say that I went when you went near the river to, you know, uh, do my daily ablutions. That time I fell into the river and I drowned myself like that. So he agreed and he released him. So that is how he used his diplomatic skills. And Raghunath Das, and now Ramananda Rai also, with the Lord himself. He was diplomatically just telling few good things about he didn't directly tell him. please see Ram Prataprudra. He just kept saying good things about him so that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mind softened. Then finally, tell the thing. Maharaja Prataprudra, in great anxiety, could not endure not seeing the Lord. Therefore, Sri Ramanandraya, by his diplomacy, arranged a meeting with the Lord for the king. Sri Ramanandraya frankly requested Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please show your lotus feet to the king at least once. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, my dear Ramananda, you should make this request after duly considering whether it is befitting for a sannyasi to meet a king. If a mendicant meets a king, this world and the next world are both destroyed for the mendicant. Indeed, what is there to say of the next world? In this world, people will joke if a sannyasi meets a king. Ramanand Rai replied, my lord, you are the supreme independent personality. You have nothing to fear from anyone because you are not dependent on anyone. When Ramanandra addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu objected, saying, I am not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but an ordinary human being. Therefore, I must fear public opinion in three ways, with my body, mind, and words. So, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was playing the part of a devotee, that was his thing to teach us. So, he said that, no, I am not the Lord, but I am ordinary human being. I mean, from that perspective, it is not correct. As soon as the general public finds a little fault in the behavior of a sannyasi, they advertise it like wildfire. A black spot of ink cannot be hidden on a white cloth. It's always very prominent. So that's what a very totally white dhoti. Even a small little black spot is noticeable. On the other hand, dirty dhoti, it's nothing. I mean, that'll all be merged in the dirt. So a person of very good character, even one small thing they do, then everybody will talk about that. Otherwise, normally people do all kinds of nonsense. Nobody talks about it. Ramanandrai replied, my dear Lord, you have delivered so many sinful people. This King Prataprudra, the king of Orissa, is actually a servitor of the Lord and your devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, you may put milk in a big pot, but if it's contaminated by a drop of liquor, it's untouchable. The king certainly possesses all good qualities, but simply by taking up the name king, he has infected everything. But if you are still very eager for the king to meet with me, please first bring a son to meet me. It is indicated in the revealed scriptures that the son represents the father. Therefore, the son's meeting with me would be just as good as the king's meeting with me. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.78.36, it is said, Atmavai Putra Utpanna iti Vedanushasanam. The Vedas enjoin that one is born as his own son. The son is non-different from the father, and this is admitted in every revealed scripture. In Christian theology, it's believed that Christ, the Son of God, is also God. Both of them are identical. That's why they say that the Christ is the Son of God and he's non-different from God. But then some Christians got so confused, they think Christ only is God. It means he's just non-different from God because he's the Son of God. And just like it's also saying that the Vedas enjoin that one is born as his own son. So it's an expansion. The son is non-different from the father, and this is admitted in every revealed scripture. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is suggesting that let his son come to me, and that is son coming is okay, he's not the king. And that is as good as the king meeting with me. Ramanand Rai then went to inform the king about his talks with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and following the Lord's orders, brought the king's son to see him. The prince, just entering upon his youth, was very beautiful. He was blackish in complexion and had large lotus eyes. The prince was dressed in yellow cloth, and there were jeweled ornaments decorating his body. Therefore, anyone who saw him would remember Lord Krishna. Seeing the boy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately remembered Krishna. Meeting the boy in ecstatic love, the Lord began to speak. Here is a great devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Upon seeing him, everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, son of Maharaja Nanda. Purport. On his Anubhasya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura states that a materialist mistakenly accepts the body and mind as the source of material enjoyment. In other words, a materialist accepts the bodily conception of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not regard the son of Maharaja Prataprudra with the idea that he was a materialist, being the son of a materialist, nor did he consider himself the enjoyer. Mayavadi philosophers make a great mistake by assuming that the Sachidananda Vigraha, the transcendental form of the Lord, is like a material body. However, there is no material contamination in transcendence, nor is there any possibility of imagining a spirituality in matter. One cannot accept matter as spirit, as indicated by the technical words Bauma Ijya Di. Materialistic Mayavadis imagine the form of God in matter, although according to their imagination, God is unlimitedly formless. This is simply mental speculation. Even though Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he placed himself in the position of a gopi. He also accepted the king's son directly as the son of Maharaja Nanda, Brajendra Nandana Hari. This is perfect vision according to the direction of the Vedic culture as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Panditaha Samadarshina. Such acceptance of the absolute truth according to Vaishnava philosophy is explained in both the Mundaka Upanishad and the Katha Upanishad in the following words. Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Na Medhaya Na Bahuna Srutena Yam Evaisha Vrunute Tena Labhyas Tasyesha Atma Vivrinute Tanum Swam. The Supreme Lord is not obtained by expert explanations, by vast intelligence, nor even by much hearing. He is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. The living entity is entangled in material existence due to his lack of such spiritual vision. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung in his Kalyana Kalpataru, Samsare Asya Prakriti Bhajiya Purusha Abhimane Mari. When the living entity comes to the material world, he thinks himself the enjoyer, and thus he becomes more and more entangled. A lot of philosophy in this. The Lord, here is a great devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, upon seeing everyone can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, son of Maharaja Nanda. So here, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that a materialist mistakenly accepts the body and mind as the source of material enjoyment. So he has a bodily conception of life. So he did not see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not see Prataparudra's son as an ordinary material body, nor did he consider himself the enjoyer. So the Mayavadis make a great mistake by assuming that the transcendental form of the Lord is like a material body. However, there is no material contamination in transcendence, nor is there any possibility of imagining a spirituality in matter. So that is what here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body is not material, and this body of the prince, it is not spiritual. One cannot accept matter as spirit, as indicated by the technical materialistic Mayavadis imagine the form of God in matter. Although according to their imagination, God is unlimitedly formless. So Mayavadis, what they think is that Krishna, because he's got a form, that must be material. That is just speculation. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so he placed himself in the position of a gopi. He also accepted the king's son directly as the son of Maharaja Nanda, Brajendra Nandana Hari. So just as he is the supreme personality of Godhead, but he was acting like a devotee, in the same way, he was making Maharaja Prataprudra's son, who is just an ordinary person, he was considering that he is Krishna because he was looking like Krishna. This is perfect vision according to the direction of the Vedic culture, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Panditah Samadarshina. Such acceptance of the absolute truth according to Vaishnava philosophy is explained in both Mundaka Upanishad and Kata Upanishad. Because the living entity is entangled in material existence due to his lack of such spiritual vision. We're not able to see the Lord everywhere, right? In Bhagavad Gita, it says that Suni Chaiva Shwapakecha Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmano Gavi Hastini Suni Shaiva Shwapakecha Panditaha Samadarshina. So Pandita is able to see the same Krishna in everybody's hearts. In a dog's heart, in an elephant's heart, in a Chandala's heart, in a Brahmana's heart. Body is different, but what he sees is Krishna. So you should be able to see, a person who's spiritually elevated can see Krishna everywhere, even in the body of, all uh, human being, all living entities. You can see only Krishna. While we see only body, materialist sees only the external body, the body and mind. And but a devotee, a self-realized person, can see Krishna everywhere. And likewise, Krishna was also acting like he was taking the position of a jiva. So all these things are possible. Sarvam, sarvam kalvam idam brahma. Everything is Brahman. A self-realized soul sees that. Oh, again, lost. Self-realized soul sees only Brahman everywhere. And Krishna, not only Brahman, but he sees Paramatma and Krishna. So in this way, when he saw Krishna, when he saw the prince, it is not Mayavada philosophy. Mayavadis, they say that all forms are the same. They're all Maya. But Krishna was, a Vaishnava's way of seeing it is that everything is part of Krishna. So it can represent Krishna. So that is how he saw it. Okay. Um, um, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I've become very much obligated just by seeing this boy. After saying this, the Lord again embraced the prince. As soon as the prince was touched by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, symptoms of ecstatic love immediately manifested themselves in his body. These symptoms included perspiration, trembling, tears, being stunned, and jubilation. Krishna Krishna kahe nache karaye rodana, Tanra Bhagya dekis Slaga Kari Bhakta Ghana. The boy began to cry and dance, and he chanted Krishna, Krishna. Upon seeing his bodily symptoms and his chanting and dancing, all the devotees praised him for his great spiritual fortune. So, this is real good fortune when one can come out of the material entanglement of identifying oneself with the body and the mind, which is the source of all suffering, which is the source of um, our moroseness or lack of happiness, is all because of identifying ourselves with the body and the mind. And here, just by the touch of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it completely, he became ecstatic and he could realize his original true self. The Atma is full of happiness, full of ananda, especially when it is in touch with the Paramatma. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's touch was enough to arouse this great happiness of love for Krishna. And that is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's uh, this thing, his purpose in coming to, I mean, his avatar for this age. And we should remember, he is the Yuga avatar for this age. He's still very much here. He is the most prominent personality, more than all other avatars in Kali Yuga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the avatar for this age. And he is ready to give the same kind of ecstasy for all living entities. That is his great mercy. He wants to touch everybody and give them Krishna Prem. And once we are touched by that, we'll be so happy. We think, what what a fool I was thinking all other things mattered. Everything is useless. So that is that is, how devotees were thinking how fortunate this prince is, that he is actually a materialist. He is a prince and is leading a, I mean, he did not have this kind of vision or love. But by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's touch, the love for Krishna was aroused in the heart. And this is the fast track method that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to give, because it takes many, many lifetimes of perfection before one can even understand who's God and understand what's my relationship with Him, and, be capable of experiencing love for Him, very elevated. And that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving it first. First, he is giving us a touch of him and able to feel some happiness and love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then our spiritual journey starts very quickly. If we can feel some love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's easier to become Gauranga conscious than Krishna consciousness, because Krishna is difficult to attain. He's very, very, very strict also. He is very pure. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani, very compassionate. And so he is easy to please also. Whatever we do, like a mother is okay with it. And so she is a little bit, she just chant Hare Krishna, very happy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't demand anything much. And we just have to ask for his mercy, and he's ready to give it. That's all. And his touch, very quickly we can get elevated. We don't have to do any other difficult thing. So at that time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calmed the youth and ordered him to come there daily to meet him. Just see his mercy. Prataprudra wanted to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only once, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling his son to come daily to meet him. And he also wanted to benedict Prataprudra through this. Ramanandra and the boy then departed from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Ramanandra took him back to the king's palace. The king was very happy when he heard of his son's activities. Just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love. just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly. So that is how, just like diseases pass from one person to another, this disease of love for Krishna is also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made it like, infectious. That's why we need to converse and discuss about him, because it travels from heart to heart, this love for Krishna. And we don't, it's not an intellectual thing, or it's not just by understanding with one's intelligence, or but it is simply from heart to heart. And then so the king was also feeling the same ecstasy that the son felt. He did not go and meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but just by embracing the son, he also felt the love. So this is something very mystical, and that can only go bit from the. See, normally in material life, if you love someone, you can also, you keep on glorifying that person. Maybe some others may get the same thing. It can happen, but it's not immediately, it won't happen. But here, love for the Lord, you can get it immediately, simply by associating with a person who's got love for Krishna. Very mystical. And so, just by embracing his son, the king was filled with ecstatic love, just as if he had touched Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, we always want this mercy. Somehow, we want quick results. We don't want difficult processes. We want immediately to feel love for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so that, we can be happy and make quick spiritual progress. Okay, thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
So wonderful narration, and you were explaining about the one of the most beautiful part of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord is explaining the intense desire of Prataputra Maharaj, how he achieved. It's gradually, very constructively developed from nothing to final mercy of Mahaprabhu himself, and with the purpose, with a lot of explanations. So wonderful, Mataji. And also, I would like to really show our gratitude in spite of our busy schedule and travel. Still, you are keeping up your mood of serving us. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. It's a pleasure, Prabhu. Thank you for the service.
Even today, Mataji, the devotees all keeping like that. They even a small piece of cloth, they get so much overwhelmed, the Guru or Krishna. So these are all stated and properly educated and passed the mood by Mahaprabhu himself. Really wonderful, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Devotees, any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Sini.
Mataji, you said about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got spiritual body now. Even whenever Krishna was born in Vrindavan, he also got same body, no, Mataji. How it is?
What?
Mataji,
What was the question?
Mataji is saying Mahaprabhu had the spiritual body. Similarly, Krishna also had the spiritual body. No, that's what's her question.
Yes, of course. Yes. He is Krishna himself, no? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also Krishna himself, but in the mood of Radharani. Together, Radha and Krishna combined. So it is also spiritual only. Simply he comes and he acts like an ordinary person just to teach us how to be a devotee.
Okay, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Very nice class.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions, comments?
Ayan is very quiet today.
Maybe his
Hare
studies.
Krishna Mataji.
Yes, I
Hare
am.
Krishna.
Dhanyavad Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji, for giving this class, Mataji. I like the point where the son of Prataparudra Prabhu was looking like Krishna, and Chaitanya Prabhu just embraced him. And Prataparudra Prabhu also embraced him, and he got the same mood. That's why engaging with his son, he got the same mood what he got. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Bol. Right.
Any other questions, comments? Otherwise, we'll wind up. Thank you so much, Madhaji.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय चैतन्य चतुर्थ की जय भांसकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधु एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो
Nanda Gaudiya Vaishnava
Vindaki.
Jai.
Krishna Prabhu.
Jai.
Patni Madhaji.
Hari Hari Bol.
Jai. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Krishna Mataji. Pranam.
I think she left.
Oh, no problem. Hare Krishna.